Hello, CrazyCat690 here, and I know I might be a bit late with this, but I wanted to talk about the Last of Us Part 2 Paris Games Week trailer and the problem that Polygon has with it. And before I get into the Polygon piece, I did want to give my own 2 cents on the trailer, and that is that I didn't like the trailer personally because it was just a cinematic and it seems it seems like a very spoilery one at that. Like the woman who was throwing up is obviously Anna, Ellie's mother, and yeah, I don't think we ever really needed to know she was going to be part of the game before we got our hands on it ourselves. Outside of like a few snippets teased in trailers, like real trailers, this felt like it felt very blunt, and it feels like something in the game will lose a lot of impact because we saw this cinematic. Like the female villain in this trailer also seemed quite special in her own way. Like she was cold and badass, and I hope she doesn't end up playing a big part, because you don't want to know that she dies or how she dies. I think they may replace her later on with a more generic henchman and just showed off the character for this trailer. That's what I hope, at least. That would be one way to do it without spoiling too much about this event in particular, but as it is, I didn't like the trailer, but it was still good in some ways. Like it was nice to see it in action, the way like we now know this is how they want the game to look. The last trailer was more or less a concept trailer, because it didn't look in-game or even like it was running on an in-game engine. So it was nice to see how it's progressing, and just that the engine is looking real good. Let's just make this smaller again. And overall, I don't think Naughty Dog is clever when they try to be coy about her identity, because she's obviously Anna, and fans figured it out real quick. I didn't think it at first. I thought she was a new character actually, but I was wondering if she could be Ellie when watching before they showed her face properly, because she was she sounded similar and she looked similar, so I thought she might be Ellie at some point, but I gave it up as I had watched the trailer. And then someone pointed out, well, it could be Anna, and after several analysis videos stating how she is probably pregnant, which is why she made the threat to cut in her belly, it became clear that it's most likely Anna pregnant with Ellie, and we'll see that as part of the story. And I think it's too much to show at this point, because the game is still far off, at worst a 2019 release, so at this point they hadn't shown this much of the first game. I think the marketing for the first game was on point, that they after the first reveal trailer they showed mostly gameplay from the same segment, showing just that the gameplay itself is very dynamic and that you can choose how you play and so on. So this was an odd step in my opinion. Now to the Polygon piece itself. It's a very weird article written by Julia Alexander. Now Polygon has a reputation of being very PC and make a big point of having more women and diversity in games, and with this trailer they basically got that, but what they also got with that was equal treatment. Like, you could replace all the characters with men and they would complain about no women in it, but they wouldn't be complaining about the violence. The violence would be fine if it was targeted against men, which we will see in this article, as they go on mentioning the amount of violence performed on the women, with no mention of the two white male characters in it that both get brutally killed, but you wouldn't even know that they are in the trailer based on this article. And that is weird. I will agree that it was kind of uncomfortable to sit through, but that's just because with this game they're pushing the graphics engine and just the realistic performance that Naughty Dog is famous for. So when they do a scene like this, of course it's not gonna be cartoony and lighthearted. It's a post-apocalyptic game that looks brilliant. Now I don't know if they really watched it that careful, because the one victim is obviously named in the trailer. Yara is the Asian woman being hammered. It is kind of clear why they're being tortured. They're apostates. They're attacked by a religious cult that's obviously an enemy in the game. And our characters, or the protagonists in this scenario, are obviously not religious nutjobs. They're trying to survive instead of joining a cult. That's what I got from it. And that's what I was left with it, not residual nausea. You would think that game journalists have seen so many violent games at this point that they're used to this kind of things, even though the violence was more over the top than we were overall used to. But they've also reviewed Wolfenstein 2, by this point, which they gave a 9 out of 10, and this was over the top, according to them. So it's raises some questions. Right, so trailer pitches to its audience of what to expect from the full game. Yes, this is true, and it's also true for this trailer, because you can read something into the relationship between these characters. Like, the woman strung up, quite possibly Anna, has a relationship to the cult. And the young boy that comes in to rescue them have a relationship with Yara, and the two have a tense relationship with Anna, as they all rescue each other more or less. And then they decide to fight together against the infected that show up at the end. Again, why are these women being attacked? They're apostates. It's not a big mystery. The big mystery is more about why they're apostates. How do they fit in, and how do they come across the cult that hunt them down for this particular reason? Too familiar. Let's see what that means. Without any context, trailer fails to introduce or even really tease the story players will embark on. That is the problem. Really. Them being apostates is no context at all. Fair enough. The violence is particularly upsetting as it features the assault of women. Again, no mention of the assault of the men, and even the killing of the men. Violent attacks on women, many times for perfunctory purposes, isn't new. Well, no, because as a society we hold women to a very high standard, and we don't want to see them get hurt. While men are more disposable, and we've seen this so many times. The default enemy in every game for all history has been men, and only recent times have seen more female enemies. Like female women can be main villains, but they've never really been a big part of the canon fodder that we mow down as the protagonist. And that's something that's going to have to change if we want to strive for actual equality and not pretend equality when which they want. They merely want more diverse cast of protagonists that are never in danger, it would seem. Because if you put women and minorities in these games that they want to be included in, then they're going to get hurt just like anyone else. That shouldn't be a controversy. That's what they've asked for ages now. And I'm not opposed to a diverse cast of characters. Naughty Dog has been doing this for quite some time, and The Last of Us had a very diverse cast of characters, and it didn't hurt the experience at all. In fact, I think it elevated it in some regards. I mean, Bill, the character Bill in the first game was a very interesting character, and when they very discreetly revealed that he was in fact gay, that just added extra depth. Not because he was a gay character, because his character happened to be gay. It added some more understanding to his life, and so on. Let's continue. The Killing Joke saw the Joker torture Barbara Gordon in a statement that reinforced the notion that gender influences violence. Well, yes, but that's because genders right now do influence violence, because we are so opposed to women being hurt. This isn't a radical idea, it's just a notion we continue to reinforce. It's just the way it is, and gaming is a good way to alter that notion, but not if you're going to complain and stir up controversy every time women are treated the same as men in video games. The volatile imagery used in the trailer underlined the heinous acts being committed as familiar scenes to us. We've seen this play out in TV shows or movies before, and in real life 35% of women have experienced violence at the hands of another person in their lifetimes, according to 2007 report from the United Nations. So? No, really, I'm asking. Men are by far the biggest victim of violence at the hands of another person. I'm not sure that this is going to... Oh no, this is only focused on women. This percentage means nothing. It doesn't take part in a fictional reality. It has no influence whatsoever, and they never reference it again, so it falls flat. It's weird. Feels very weird. The fact that their antagonist is a woman herself does little to undercut what the trailer is on its most blunt level. An extended sequence of brutal and unexplained violence against women being used to thrill the viewer and ultimately sell video games. Again, no. It's not unexplained. They're apostates. They're enemies of a violent cult. And it's not being used to thrill the viewer, it's being used to make the viewer uncomfortable. Of course, it's made to sell a video game. I mean, it's still a trailer and that's its purpose, but it's not controversial. I mean, there's been so many trailers before that show violence out of context, that actually shows it out of context. This was a cinematic trailer showing a full cutscene that explained they were apostates, they were enemies, they needed to kill them. The cult needed to kill them. And most of the protagonists in this sequence was women. Would it have been better if they were white men? I wonder. With a game like The Last of Us Part 2, in which presumably there are dozens of other scenes to showcase, why pick the scene where women are being sadistically brutalized? Because it shows a general conflict between the protagonists and the cult, and the protagonists happen to be women, mostly. When Naughty Dog played a gameplay during E3 in 2012, people called the 5 minutes Joel spent tracking down hunters and annihilating them gratuitous with its violence. Yeah, it was a violent game. Sure. Neil Druckmann, creative director at Naughty Dog, told Shack News that the violence players would encounter in The Last of Us wasn't perfunctory, but served a purpose. Yeah? The violence you see inside this world isn't gratuitous, I can't speak, and over the top just for the sake of being violent, Druckmann said. It's setting a tone, it's setting a reality that Joel and Ellie are having to deal with. Everyone has to feel tense. Everything has to feel grounded in reality. The reason why we're going for such a realistic violence is because we want you to believe the stakes are high for Ellie and Joel. Yes, I see no problem with this. It's a game for adults. There's a difference in how Naughty Dog handled the trailers for The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. Yes, indeed, because this would have been a gameplay trailer if they... like showing actual gameplay if it was handled like the first game. In The Last of Us, Joel may be gunning down hunters, but we understand why he's doing it. Really, do we understand why he's doing it in the first trailers? That, my friends, were out of context. We only saw him clobbering men because he needed to get from point A to point B. There was no context. For all we know, he attacked them without any cause. And those he's attacking aren't women or marginalized. Well, that's the big problem here, aren't they? Because the people he were attacking were white men. There's no problem. This statement alone shows that Polygon is they're sexist and racist in this scenario, because as soon as the people you're attacking are women or marginalized people, it's a problem. But they want women and marginalized people to be included in games like The Last of Us, because it's a big game. It's a big hardcore game at that, and they want inclusion. But they don't want them to get hurt. How are they going to fix that? They could make every single female character in The Last of Us Part 2 a Mary Sue, of course. Like Nadine Ross in Uncharted 4. The worst character in Uncharted history. But that wouldn't be fun, that would make it unbelievable, because it's a world where people do get hurt, and women and marginalized people shouldn't be excluded from that. We're completely fine with people being brutally murdered as long as they're white men. And that, well, that or terrorists, of course. We've been dehumanizing the enemy for so long now, making them faceless PMCs who never reveal their face or skin color. So when a game comes along, the rare game that comes along that actually puts a face on the enemy, Of course it's going to rustle a few jimmies. It's natural. I get that, but to call out that the women and marginalized people in particular shouldn't be hurt is just wrong, because if they can't be hurt, they shouldn't be in the game. Simple as that. In context with the rest of the game, the scene may have an emotional hook beyond disgust. Probably. Maybe. We will probably get to know the characters and learn why this violence was necessary. Again, they were apostates and opposed the cult. Naughty Dog did put forth extra effort to put women in more leading roles. Yes, good for them. The trailer hints at larger roles for both women involved. These women exist in a violent world, set up by Naughty Dog in the original The Last of Us. To repeat previous points, because it's important, it's not the situation the women were in that's jarring and inexcusable, but how the scene and those characters were introduced. Really? How? It's simply not. It was a clumsy way to introduce them because it was so spoilery, but it wasn't. There was really no problem with it on a moral level. If the trailer had spent 30 more seconds explaining what had led to this repugnant moment, the violence may have been explicable. I don't see how. You don't need more context. They were enemies. They were a cult attacking apostates. Want to see more? Then they would show too much. Providing a trailer with little to no context lead to more questions about how this trailer came to be. How many women were involved in the creation, editing and approval of this trailer? Why does it matter? Why? Would be fun to know, and if that matters. What if a ton of women made this trailer? What if only women made this trailer? Would it be better then? In an industry and studio that's predominantly run by men, did women feel comfortable offering a critique? Women should always feel comfortable offering critique, and it should be taken into account, but we shouldn't hold that critique to a higher standard than men. If the critique is dumb, then it's dumb. The trend is bigger than The Last of Us 2. A new trailer for Detroit Become Human, also shown at Paris Games Week, included an extended sequence of domestic abuse in which a drunken man beats his daughter and maid. Yes, it's kind of a problem for me, because every time they show a scene like this, the bad guy looks like me. And I don't like being depicted as a drunken domestic abuse person every time such a scene plays out. How about a woman who's the abuser next time, huh? That could be fun. That would be innovative. Nor is this issue limited to video game marketing. Last year, Fox came under fire after a billboard in Los Angeles promoting X-Men Apocalypse, depicting Mystique, Jennifer Lawrence being strangled by Apocalypse. Again, the context is he's the bad guy, she's basically the protagonist. He is dangerous to her. This isn't glorifying violence against women, it's showing how horrible it is, how horrible this guy is. I mean, how ignorant do you have to be to look at it as some sort of glorification of violence against women? It baffles me. They're apologizing to us, baffled, but like they got their advertising from it. It caused some controversy. More people heard about it that way. So in a sense, I can get why they were happy with it. Like in the trailer for The Last of Us Part 2, there is no context for the assault. And even with context, is this the best image to sell the film? To capture what makes X-Men special? No. Well, fair enough. It's not a really good image to advertise with. It's kind of boring really, but that's about it. Fox later apologized for the billboard, which was a bad move, removing it and other similar marketing materials, admitting that the advertising carried with it a negative connotation that invoked imagery and history of violence against women. Well, in that case, I never want to see a man getting hurt on advertising again. I never want to see a man hurt, because it invokes imagery and history of violence against men, which there is plenty of. In our enthusiasm to show the villainy of the character Apocalypse, we didn't immediately recognize the upsetting connotation of this image in print form, Fox said in a statement to Hollywood Reporter. The connotation being... I actually have to look up that word. I'm sorry, English isn't my first language. An idea or feeling which a word invokes for a person in addition to its literal and primary meaning. Right. So, this guy being bad, hurting a good character, invokes feelings of, oh no, he's evil, he must be stopped. Is that not a good image? Is that not a good message to get across? Should we be rooting for him? Should they show him picking up flowers? What are they looking for? The new Last of Us 2 trailer was supposed to introduce new characters, which it did, including Yara. Oh, the unnamed character. And possibly even Ellie's mom. Again, 2 unnamed characters. Suddenly one has a name. They're even speculating about Anna. But all we met were victims of abuse. No, we met survivors of abuse. They survived the ordeal, picked up arms, and were ready to face more. That's what we saw. Survivors. Central part of The Last of Us. Survivors. That's what we saw. We met ideas of what women should be in games like this, not actual women. Are actual women not strong survivors? Are they not capable of withstanding abuse and rising up to the challenge? Because if they aren't, no, then there were not actual women. If real women are only victims all the time, then no, they were not actual women. But the women shown in the trailer were survivors of abuse and survivors ready to face more. They were strong. And that to me is a good depiction of women. It's a fair depiction of women, because I don't think I don't think women are victims. I don't think they're weak. I think women as a whole are strong and capable of a great deal of things. And I do think many are capable of looking at this trailer and seeing that. And I do think that's the message. That women can also survive in a harsh, post-apocalyptic world full of evil cultists and zombies. Only Polygon wouldn't be so blinded by their own sexism and racism that they could see it too. That would be all for now. I hope you understood some of my incoherent ranting for this day.